All right, here we go. This, if you are new to the channel, is Ungovernable. I am Matt. This is Jocelyn. We have a big show. We're talking about two big topics today.
In one show.
Yeah, in one show. We're going to try and get through it all. Something tells me we're going to need like a couple of follow-up shows in the future in order to cover all this stuff. But just a reminder off the top here, if I can make things work correctly, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell. We're not monetized on YouTube. I don't ever endeavor to be monetized on YouTube. If you do watch on any other platforms, we're on Odyssey. We're also on Vim TV streaming right now. And so if you give us upvotes there, we get crypto. So that's the only way that we, monetize our content. So definitely head over there if you are on those platforms or check them out. So that being said, lead with the wine.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have a habit of picking wines based off of labels.
Yeah.
So
this was, you picked this one.
I did. I'm a sucker for
Cabernet.
I'm a sucker for a tattoo girl. I'll tell you that very much. So Cabernet, and where's it from? It says Columbia Valley.
Yeah,
Columbia Valley is a good spot for Cabernet, and I think it's 2018. So not too expensive. It was like $13.
It's a screw top.
Yep, screw top. Love a screw top. Easy access. Get it in quickly.
Which one are you using?
I am going to go with the low profile cup so that I do not cause a spill on the internet. All right. So the first subject that we're talking about while Jocelyn pours the wine is something that we are regular watchers of Del Bigtree and the High Wire.
Absolutely.
Love what he's done throughout the entire
100%.
pandemic as well as beforehand. He had a episode with Geert Vandenbosch.
Not his first
episode, but
wow.
What the heck was the title? Hold on, I'm gonna try and share the
title for sure.
I'm gonna try and share it here. What the heck? Where
it's
am
the
I?
highwire.com.
Yeah, highwire.com.
And then they stream every Thursday.
No,
live.
Oh, here it is right here.
You can go back and see all the episodes.
So it's highwire.com/watch. It's the most recent episode. Obviously, the one that comes
it's a
up
heavy one.
Thursday this week will be the new one, but so this one's the one that's up right now. And it's called
watch it.
My Final Call.
Ooh. It's more than a boogeyman.
Yeah. It's very heavy on sciencey type stuff. The interview starts maybe about 45 minutes into the episode after the regular segments. And so it is fairly thick. So we're going to try and talk about it in a like a layman's.
Well, you're good at that. I need you to do that
way.
For me.
Yeah. Well, I promised we wouldn't get too technical. The last thing I want is Jocelyn falling asleep on.
No, I don't fall asleep.
Show.
I just need you to dumb it down for me. But it's scary.
Yeah. We already got a new viewer in, Richard Copeland. Never seen you before, but I'm expecting some spice. So yes.
I was going to say Chili Pepper. They came out with a new album
recently.
Yeah.
We do like the Chili Peppers. That is true. So we don't have any go ahead to use their music on our show though. All right. So the gist of the show. All right. Geert Vandenbosch is he's like a virologist, I think.
He's a virologist, veterinarian.
Yeah.
Well, originally a veterinarian
and
virologist, worked with the WHO, and he worked
he worked for Gavi, right?
Ebola vaccine, not Ebola vaccine. Is that the one he worked on?
It might have been Ebola. It was one of the really bad ones in Africa. And so not an anti-vaxxer by any stretch of the imagination. You're talking about, someone that
he worked on all the boards,
helped create vaccines in the past. So let me ask you, before I get too geeky and nerdy with all of the stuff, what did you take away from what he presented on the show? Like, what was the main kind of like theme or takeaway that you came away with?
I think he was very clear from his first interview with Del to this one that we have fucked ourselves with the vaccine. But I think I took away from it what I thought when I first saw him speak about it and how it worked. That we're in for some
potentially
like just really bad.
Yeah.
Bad. And I've been waiting for it. Some people have been saying this is going to be it. It's going to be dropped, but I feel like somewhere, I don't know, not so in the next year, I would think.
Yeah.
So we're down the road. We're going to have big problems.
So a recurring theme that is going to come up a lot in the future this show is going to be, and this is something that we've talked a lot about offline between the two of us, is the idea that the further you get away from nature, the further you get away from how things normally and naturally play out,
right.
the worse the fallout is, right? Like the more you kind of like tip the balance in the wrong direction, and when it readjusts, like there's lots of pain, right?
Yeah.
Frankenstein, any sci-fi where they're basically
start tipping the scales in that direction,
doing things completely,
so far away,
all science, no nature, nothing natural or anything,
or not even looking at the natural processes.
Yeah.
And trying to work within those, or they're just trying to completely change it.
Yeah, like short circuit it or hack it. This is also going to be very applicable to a number of other areas other than just health. It applies to economics. It applies to politics, the judicial system. It applies to a whole host of other things, right? Foreign policy,
that
education.
Idea of getting so far from our nature as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, when that balance gets gets righted, or when the ship comes back, right? The pain is much worse because you have much further to come back. And then usually, you have to deal with all of those ramifications while that's happening, right? So this is kind of what I took away from it. Geert Vanden I'm screwing up his name. Vanden Bosch is essentially saying that we effectively screwed with the normal process of, viral transmission. We screwed with the normal process of how an epidemic usually plays out. Right.
And how our immune systems respond to it. And in doing so, how these major viruses naturally settle into their place.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to pull up U.S. COVID cases. This is from Statista. This is essentially from basically the beginning of the COVID pandemic to present. And if you notice, there's a bunch of humps and then falls off, right? And then this really big one we're just kind of coming out of now. This is all Omicron, this huge spike up, right? So and also you have to understand the way this curve should look, right, is typically one spike, a fall back to the baseline, a bigger spike for the next variant, and then a fall back to the baseline. And then you get into this rhythmic thing where when it becomes endemic, if it doesn't go away from natural herd immunity, you end up just having these kind of like rises and falls like you would with the flu and things like that every single year, right?
Well, you should explain that you understand this because you had biomedical engineering.
Yeah, but
it helps you understand the expression of everything.
Anarchists understand that when you lead with your degree, you're typically full of shit. So I'm
leading for you.
But all right. So from my understanding, what he's basically focusing on this chart is when you see these rises in cases and then the falls, it's supposed to look kind of like this, where it happened in like June and July of 21, where it comes back to the baseline, where there's almost no transmission happening. There's very few cases. And then when you get the next variant, that's when you get the next upswing. The problem is within the last year or so, notice each one of these humps, we're not really getting back to baseline.
Little tiny ones? Those little thin lines?
Well, not just the thin lines, but kind of like collected together. Notice how they never get back down to the axis. They never get back down to the bottom.
Looks like they do a little bit.
Yeah. So this is the other thing is it has to do with the average, right? So you can't just go down and touch it. You have to go down and then you have to stay there for a while before it peaks back up again, right? So even now that we're coming out of Omicron, if you notice, it looks like we kind of get back to baseline, but you still see these pops every so often, right?
And then it looks like it's going back up.
Yeah. And so if you took if I had, a charting tool or something and you took the average line of all this stuff, it wouldn't hit the bottom, right? And so, and if I'm correct, I believe that this first big hump is alpha. No, I'm sorry. This first hump here is alpha.
That's the delta.
Right? This is beta.
Oh, beta.
This is delta. And now this big one is Omicron. All right. And so what he's effectively saying is this is the first time in history that we've mass vaccinated everyone in a population or attempted to globally. not just the at-risk population during an epidemic. And that's what's causing all these problems.
He really says it's not only that, it's the pressure that happens.
Yes.
While vaccinating all these people, while like, so when you vaccinate for measles, right, there's no measles epidemic happening.
Right.
So they're doing it. So like, and he's saying you're vaccinating during a time now when the virus is everywhere,
actively being transmitted.
And that creates the pressure.
Yes.
Right. For the variants to
happen. And as if that's not bad enough, we then threw gasoline on the fire, or technically a nuclear bomb, because we mass vaccinated people with a vaccine that doesn't have any neutralizing antibodies.
Right.
It creates these antibodies that kind of like, if you think of the COVID particle that everyone's seen, the antibodies kind of like create a barrier around it, but they don't kill it. What they do is essentially, and I think maybe alpha might have been slightly different, but now with the future variants, because they're all derivatives of the prior form, they're not the same thing. And that's what the vaccine's based off of. Now there's not even any neutralizing antibodies when you get what they would call acquired immunity from a vaccine. The only people that have neutralizing antibodies are the people that are naturally immune because they got sick and got over it.
Does that have anything to do with the fact that he was saying it stays in the upper lungs?
Well, no. So the disease always progresses the same way, right? It's introduced through your nasal passages and your other like soft tissue, wet tissue areas, like a normal airborne respiratory virus, right? It goes to your upper lungs. It kind of like starts to kind of like replicate there. But then where the real damage is done is when it gets to your lower respiratory system. And that's when it starts going cell to cell to cell to cell and just starting causing inflammation.
So that's when he was talking about it. I was like, oh, so the vaccine is protecting him. There has to be something bad because it's called the final call.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So
that's where it was.
So he acknowledges that the vaccine in people that are specifically at risk, they get milder cases because the actual virus gets this kind of like protective layer of antibodies around it, and it stops it from being able to
deep
go from cell to cell. It like slows it down, right?
Another interesting fact we were just talking about, like when coronavirus, when the COVID virus came out, right? They were saying that people who smoked did not have as bad of a situation, and we were saying,
it's because it interfered.
The damaged cells, it interfered with the virus to go deeper because the damaged cells it couldn't connect with.
Yes. Yeah. There were some breaks, right? It also had to do with the ACE2 inhibitor. So we're not going to nerd out on that, but because that's where the spike protein attaches and all kinds of other stuff. But so the added problem now is though that we've seen this thing stick around in a way that it shouldn't still be around.
Well,
right?
It should be going down to the.
It should be going down to the baseline. And so every time it doesn't go down to the baseline, the higher number of people that are actively transmitting it back and forth, in this case, mostly vaccinated people, because they're at higher risk now to get sick from the virus because they don't have any natural immunity. They don't have neutralizing antibodies. So it's when it's introduced into their body,
is doing the job.
It is
not their body.
And so what they do is they get a mild case up here. It goes to their lower lungs. It doesn't cause the same catastrophic, result, but they don't have any neutralizing antibodies to stop it here.
Right.
So it always ends up here, right? Which means even though it's not giving you pneumonia, it's still creating tons of different, replications of the virus, essentially, right? And so a lot of people are transmitting this back and forth, even when we're getting to that downswing. And what that causes is what's called viral pressure. Okay. And so that viral pressure, essentially, if you can think about it, like think of, a kid trying to overcome a roadblock that their parents put in the way from them playing video games or something. Right. Okay. So you put that roadblock, the physical measure or the password or whatever on there. Right. The kid that's really committed, that doesn't want to listen. We'll have an episode on this later. We'll try to get past it, right? We'll try to evolve and learn something to get past it.
Move past it, yeah.
And so it's those times when you get down to the baseline when things are normally happening that the virus doesn't have many opportunities to get past the roadblock, right? But because we have extra people now that are carrying it around and transmitting it, it gets extra at bats.
And they're not getting that
and they're not
immunity. No one's getting the natural immunity because you can't get to that point anymore.
They're not getting natural immunity, and they're not neutralizing it as well. So they just shed and shed and shed, right? It's funny how they accused naturally immune people of being super spreaders when it was the people that got the jab that ended up being that. But so anyway, so
the more that it's out there and around there, the more opportunity it has to shift and change and become a Franken thing.
And so the first couple of iterations of the virus, if you kind of give it a personality, which I've always been told in science classes, you never give, things that don't have higher level intelligence personality. They just kind of do things mechanically, right? But if we, kind of anthropomorphize the virus, the first couple of iterations, what it was trying to overcome was transmissibility. Right. We were trying to short circuit it going from me to you or for you to someone else.
Right.
And the virus was like, okay, I'm being stopped here. How do I get around that? Right. Omicron has proven to be the most transmissible version of that because that's the variant that won out. Right. And it solved the equation. It solved the roadblock. So the point we're at now is that it's already solved transmissibility.
Right.
But where we're at now is we're at a point where it can get in tons of people's bodies. Mm-hmm. All the vaccinated people can't neutralize the virus.
They don't have a way.
And the roadblock it's facing now is when it gets in the lower lungs, it can't cause as much havoc as it used to, right? So what Geert Vanden Bossche is saying is that more than likely the next iteration of this virus is going to retain a lot of the transmissibility of Omicron.
Easily transmitted.
But it's going to solve the problem of not being able to kill very many people. Yeah. Very unnerving.
And he called this in the beginning when they came out. He came out and put a plea out.
Yeah.
Don't vaccinate the kids. He called the kids vacuums.
Yeah.
Because he said if you don't vaccinate the kids and the young adults, then they will create that natural immunity. They'll vacuum, they'll keep it at they would basically keep it at the alpha level, kind of, in a sense, like before it could transmit.
And let me throw this back up on the screen here. When you're looking at this chart, and I'm sorry, I can't zoom in on this, but when you get alpha and beta here, okay, and then we actually have this period where we almost get down to baseline. Is
that where we've started vaccinating?
The reason why was because it wasn't until this big downswing here where the vaccination program really hit full swing, right? January of 21 was when it really started to roll out.
That's when it just rolled out, though. They didn't give it to the kids until...
The reason why we almost got back to baseline was because so many people got it and fought it off and had natural immunity. Yeah. So the young and the the college age kids
by the Webster's.
Well, yes, yeah, and the CDC and a whole host of others, right? We can also talk about how language is used to screw us over from a freedom standpoint, but that's also another future episode. But so the nature of this is that after alpha and beta, we actually had a shot. We were close.
We were really close to
right?
Natural immunity.
But during this downswing was when we started giving people mass vaccination.
More and more. It was like, every 3 or 4 months or something, they'd add a new group of people you could put on.
Yeah. And so it began to roll out. It was mostly the at-risk people at first, which if we just stopped there, we probably would have gotten back to baseline and we wouldn't have these variants that were ridiculously scary, right? But now what's happening is during that downswing, you have all of these people that are getting vaccinated. And then what happens is we find out that 5 months after you get your second jab, you are more susceptible to getting sick than a person that naturally encountered the virus.
I think it goes up 3 months, the third shot too, right?
Yes.
Or was it the third shot's the highest?
It goes even highest. It's like 89%
the third
more
shot
likely.
Is the highest.
Right. So now look at this. We start the vaccination process in January, right? We hit baseline in July.
And that's when we were before schools, when they were trying to get all the kids.
Most people weren't fully vaccinated until March. So what happens? In August, 5 months after we started this mass vaccination plan, all of a sudden numbers start to creep up and we get Delta. Okay. And then once Delta comes back down, if you notice, we never get close to baseline before Omicron hits. Right. And so what we're in is essentially this unnatural, just unknown territory, right? And not to mention the fact that, like, we can transition this conversation to something else too. We can talk about the fact that not only is this not a normal way of going about treating a virus, this isn't a naturally occurring virus.
Stephanie Seneff.
Yes.
You can also, Undell, last week or the week before, he had on Dr. Stephanie Seneff,
Yep.
who
She's
spoke
the
about the
statistician.
genetic. She was neuro.
Oh yes, a neurologist. Yeah.
She was talking about the genetic code that is in this vaccine, and it's really scary.
Yeah.
What they've done, and I don't know how they get away with doing that, not telling people what they're putting in their bodies.
Well, no, it's
so
unnatural. It's the fear-based thing. But I mean, she also had a very worrisome prognosis, because she was talking about the how they genetically messed with the vaccine is now causing these beta sheet formations, which then causes all of these growths within mostly your brain, but also the rest of your nervous system.
Right?
And it forms like a plaque, but it starts creating these strands that basically you can't stop. Like, you can't stop them from being created.
Yeah.
And so the concern is that people that are susceptible to these beta sheet formations are going to get Alzheimer's Parkinson's and all kinds of other stuff.
If you just had something that was dormant in your body that may never wake up.
Right.
These vaccines could wake you up.
Yes. Yeah.
They could not wake you up, wake the diseases up that you may never, you may have had a propensity for it.
Yeah.
But never have shown up.
But it wouldn't have happened if it
wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the vaccine. It's very against nature. Like it's so far. You think about going back and the what is it called? Is it the pestle?
Mortar and pestle.
What is it?
Mortar and pestle.
Mortar. Yeah. Mortar and pestle, and the herbs and the teas this is so far from this. I just, not that one is the best and one's not, but they're so antithetical from each other.
Well, yeah, it's the problem is it's science for science sake.
Yeah.
Right. In the process of gain of function research, it's science for war's sake. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's essentially what we're stuck with now, is the byproduct of a bunch of people that wanted just to have a weapon to potentially kill a bunch of people in another country that then got unleashed on the planet.
We paid for it.
Yeah. No,
we weren't allowed to vote on it, but we paid for it.
This is also the sick thing is that imbalance. If it only punished the wrongdoers, that's fine. That'd be karma, right? But in this case, and in many other cases, that imbalance that's caused by the wrongdoers, typically the check comes due, and it's the normal people that had no hand in it that end up having to pay for it.
You were saying the other day, my parents had Delta.
Yeah.
And if this vaccine hadn't rolled out, would they have been
I don't think so,
victims of this?
Because going back to the chart, they contracted it and passed away from it in September. And so if I pull this up, September is the downswing of Delta.
Yeah.
Right. Meaning that this chart might not even have looked like this. Omicron. Here's the other thing. Like, Omicron could have been the next variant, or something like Omicron could have been the next variant, because typically the way the chart happens, this peak here that was basically like alpha, or I forget if it was alpha or beta here, right?
What is this? It's cases?
Yeah, this is cases. So whatever this peak was here, typically you get this peak, and then this big astronomical peak that we have with Omicron, that normally should be the second peak, because typically what happens is the virus responds to all the people that have natural immunity, and when it adapts, it tries to make itself more transmissible, but it ends up being less deadly. Right?
Yeah.
But we had it almost in reverse. Like, Delta got a little bit more deadly than the original strains. And then you got Omicron that comes along, that now that was supposed to be the second peak, but now it's like the third or fourth peak. So we're basically in uncharted territory. Like, people are just making shit up as they go along.
And the people who have been vaccinated and boosted, they have no ability to get these neutralizing antibodies.
Yeah.
And we're kind of at risk too. I mean, now we've had COVID twice, right?
Yeah.
But we're at risk in the sense of, if something really deadly comes around, it doesn't, everybody's at risk.
Yeah.
And if the whole population that did that, and they don't even know it,
Well, think about it this way. If we had let this thing play out naturally, right, we would have done our job.
Yeah.
We would have gotten it. We would have created neutralizing antibodies, and now we're part of the buffer. Okay.
The vacuum.
The problem is, or the viral vacuum or whatever, right? The problem is now the people that got the natural immunity to alpha and beta and delta, once Omicron and the next version come along, you may or may not have immunity to that.
Depending on how it,
and so now,
depending on how it modifies.
Now they're going to ask us, essentially. Well, they're not going to do it out loud because they would have to admit they're wrong. But they're essentially on the down low asking us to do our job again. And this time we have to fight a battle against a more deadly version of the virus to then get natural immunity and try and stop this fucking cycle from going on and on and on.
He's talking about it being a pretty deadly one. And he doesn't know for sure, but he put this stuff out there. Geert Vandenbosch put this stuff out there. What, a year ago?
Yeah.
A year ago.
Yeah,
and
no,
he said,
he's been
please
talking for
do not vaccinate your kids. Do not vaccinate the young adults. We need them to stop this.
Yeah.
Oh, he came on. He didn't even have an answer this time. It wasn't like don't vaccinate anyone. It was just like,
no, he was like, we've fucked it beyond belief is basically what he said.
You were saying the other day, he took it from like, talk about the model that he took it from. You were saying like he says, okay, what's different about this time around? He's not looking, he's looking to figure it out.
So we can talk about this too in depth in another episode, but I have a big bone to pick. Being someone who came from the scientific community, the way science happens is bass-ackward, okay? The way this guy approaches it makes sense. He starts from the big picture, right?
Yeah.
What should this look like, okay? Naturally. And then, all right, where's the short circuit? What isn't happening correctly? And so he goes level by level and continues to dig until he gets down to whatever the root cause is. Like, what's the problem? What we have is a scientific community, and specifically a health community
in general,
on the pharmaceutical side of things, that is geared towards looking at the microscopic first, and then they just
figure out how to make money.
And screw nature. Like, who cares about the big picture? We can't make money off the big picture, right? We can make money off of this little thing here. And we talked about how certain drugs find a home for what they're suited for. You have a biochemist or someone that has this pet molecule. And so what they do is they just go around and try and find a use for it, right? It's the Viagra example all over again. They were trying to develop something that would help with heart problems, right? But what they ended up finding was people actually got worse heart problems, but they got raging hard-ons. So we're going to sell boner pills, right? Like, that's exactly what happened. So without any care for the overall natural mechanism of what's supposed to happen in the body, they just know that there are these certain channels within the penis and this thing interferes with them and it gets you erect, right? That's all they know. What they didn't understand was they ended up giving people heart problems as a result of it and all kinds of other stuff. Not to mention the fact that there's all kinds of natural remedies for that condition, as well as every one of these other conditions that they're putting this stuff out for. But Geert takes it from top down.
Yeah.
He says, what does nature look like? And then he finds where the deviancy is, and then he tries to find what the cause of that deviance or deviation from nature is. And that's what he
was working with top virologists on everything. And what they ended up doing was completely cutting him out when he came out with this. I mean, you always have to watch, do the opposite of what people say. That's what they say. Do the opposite of what the government says.
You always do the opposite of what the government tells you.
Yeah. And everybody pushed him out. He had no one to go to. No one was listening to him. And like, it's a lot of these doctors are very similar in the sense that they've had very similar experience when they've come out, and all of a sudden they're completely ousted out of their community.
Yep.
No, they can't find places to speak.
Yeah.
And he's just so, most of my friends 100% feel like he's on it.
Yeah.
He's on the pulse of it.
Well, what's the sign? It's like, the scientific consensus is, and like the bottom of the meme is, it's easy to reach a consensus when you censor all the people that are speaking out against you, right? Like, it's
amazing that they don't have these minds that are like, just to think about, they've put a vaccine across the world, and they've mandated it, and they've made it the only option, really, right, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And they have one side at the table.
Yeah.
They don't have other sides at the table talking. When someone decides they have something to say, or like he was calling out, please listen to me.
Yeah.
He was ignored. And you would hope that if there was a big agency that had your best, life in mind or whatever, not really, but, was looking out for you, that they would want to hear if someone's like, please don't vaccinate the kids. Like, why would you not listen to that?
Yeah.
The whole thing. And now and he was saying, or were you saying that possibly the new variant that comes out will be more deadly to children.
This is the most alarming aspect of it, is when it changes, you don't know how it's going to change, right? It's somewhat of a structured process, but it's also kind of random, right? Like when the mutations happen, it's just kind of like a mosh pit, and then whatever comes out, right? Whatever becomes the dominant strain becomes the dominant strain. And so it's entirely possible that this disease that really just had one subset of the population being the most vulnerable is now going to shift so that now everyone is vulnerable. Or maybe it could just be kids, or it could just be, or all adults. It's going to be fucking Lord of the Flies around here. Who knows, right? Like, we don't know what's going to happen.
And no one's talking about it in this country. China's doing some weird shit.
No.
But like...
So let's talk about that. So
we're not doing anything.
There's been tons of videos, tons of media out of China with this messed up 1984-esque, everyone in biohazard suits, complete lockdowns, food shortages, rioting in the streets in China, which is unbelievable. Because when you riot against the Communist Party, dude, you're done. Like, that's your last... that's the last thing you do, right? So... they're on complete lockdown, zero COVID. So this was what I thought immediately upon listening to this interview, was they know, they have some sense that this could come to pass. And they've identified that the vaccines that are available don't stop transmission. So the only way to try and short circuit and get ahead of this is to literally lock everyone down and try and stop transmission by not allowing anyone to come in contact with anyone else.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that they can think of get out ahead of it, because the vaccines have basically failed. I mean, the Pfizer, you didn't see the Pfizer document dump, right? The 80,000.
I've heard about, and so if you're out there and you don't know about, or you don't watch Dell, which I highly recommend, it's not,
the Highwire email.
It's not propaganda. What he talks is, and if you go on Dell, you can get all of the dumps.
Yeah.
And he said they will be doing like a few weeks work on the dumps and talking about what's happening.
All the pharma data dumps. You also get every single week, whatever they talk about, he gives you all the research papers that they cite and everything like that. So it's completely in the open.
The fact that this isn't in the regular news is absurd.
Well, what like, everyone's looking at, here's
Johnny Depp and Amber Heard.
Well, no, everyone cares about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. They care about the,
I'm not gonna lie,
the SCOTUS
leak, I can't stop watching it.
Well,
I only watch little snippets. Johnny Depp is like my
dude, white women must be stopped. I just gotta say.
I grew up with him.
I get it. But it's, a lot of it's a diversion, right? And here's the other thing. A lot of people want to look at what they're doing in another country, right? And it's obviously the most authoritarian approach to this entire thing. It's even worse than any other country. China is the most authoritarian in dealing with this. And immediately it's easy to just write them off as stupid or crazy or maniacal. Or, I've looked at it and I said, the economy's crashing. They might be doing it to stop an uprising or something against the communist state. But it could be, there's smart people there. There's smart people there.
Or they know something seriously wrong with what we've messed with nature.
Yeah.
Once you take that step farther away.
Which, by the way, have you heard of any, I know Rand Paul has said it. Maybe Thomas Massie has said it. Have you heard of any mainstream Republicans talking about defunding gain-of-function research?
Only Rand Paul.
That's the only one I can think of.
So vocal.
I could in the comments. I could be wrong. Let me know if any other mainstream GOPers have been talking about it. But
why it's there to begin with is absolute and paid for by.
Well, you gotta remember you have neocons on both sides of the aisle. You have these people that believe in U.S. empire and world dominance and leading through might and stuff like that on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And so the vast majority of them, especially the ones that are long-termers that are entrenched, the military-industrial complex, this is the other thing that's come out of this whole COVID thing. It used to be that the military-industrial complex was the suppliers of tanks and of planes and of bombs and things like that. It's still them, but now what's really crazy is we've now found out that the pharmaceutical industry is not just in the room, they're at the table.
It's like those zombie movies where the country makes its own disease that turns everyone.
Well, yeah.
It's like a fucking harmful.
Well, no, there was some story the other day. I don't have it available on Twitter, but someone was talking about some scientist working on a version of, it wasn't Corona, it was something else. It was maybe HIV or something that could, like, reanimate the dead or something. And they're like, do you want zombies? Because this is how you freaking get zombies. Right? Right? Look, some scientific research just should not be done. Like, I mean, and as someone who, I was very lucky. I went through a lot of bioethics classes when I went through college. And it was one of the only schools that I knew of that went to such lengths to offer bioethics courses. And a lot of what we talked about in those courses was shit like this. Like, just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should.
Or mandate it across the country.
Well, yeah, and
or people lose their jobs because they don't take it.
8 billion people as guinea pigs.
Passports. Yeah. I mean, there's stuff still in the works that people have just stopped talking about. There's so much going on that how do you even keep your mind around everything? I don't even know.
Well, no, I mean,
you can't, like, conceivably.
You pick one issue, and then next week it's another issue, and next week it's another issue.
Matrix,
Yes, right? Yeah. No, you definitely. That's why I like the fact that we kind of centered on this idea of getting back to nature.
That's what we talk about lately.
If you can do anything in an aspect of your life to get back to nature, you're better off.
Back to your human nature.
We should get our
in connection with nature.
This is a total aside. I should get like our Chemex coffee pot from downstairs because
it's great.
We had a Keurig and pods everywhere and tons of garbage.
You have them. I know they're convenient.
The problem is
not convenient.
You're using like I got another story on that one too. We're never gonna get to abortion, so but
we are, because there is a connection.
There's definitely a connection. All right,
there is.
But so we changed our coffee maker because the Keurig pods are basically plastic. And you're injecting
boiling
hot water,
and it's
almost boiling water.
It's not like the
and
free.
Who knows what's leaching into your coffee when you're doing that, right? Not to mention the fact that I've never read the pod. I don't know if they put preservatives in the coffee too in order to get it in there and have shelf life or whatever.
And then you get mold and stuff. You can't clean out the inner workings of it.
Yeah,
and it's just
so we now have. It's not a pour over. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like this glass kind of like
awesome
beaker, like scientific beaker looking thing.
It's sexy.
And it is. It's got curves. It's got a badunkadunk, which is where the coffee is stored. It's an hourglass. It's our Marilyn Monroe coffee maker. Yeah. But you put like a paper filter, like a regular paper filter on top. You put your grinds in the top, pour your water over it, and it goes into the bottom. And it's like,
it's awesome.
It's simple. We were looking at other ones, and they just looked too
much
like
plastic. I just wanted to stay
plastic, too high maintenance because you had to sit there and pour and pour and pour and pour and pour. This one you just kind of like pour twice or three times. You get a full pot. So that one. And then I was talking to someone the other day about we have some wood that has to be cut up on the property, right? And when you go through your decision-making process, like, a chainsaw is convenient, right? A chainsaw it's technology that's supposed to make your life easier, right? And I'm not even, well, yeah. I mean, we don't need technology for that. I just run them out there. But what's that an alternative to? It's an alternative to an axe, right? And so, you get the convenience and maybe you get extra time because it doesn't take as long. But when you're using the axe, you get physical activity, right? So how much of our life has been replaced where we would have been doing something that takes longer, but includes physical activity with sedentary, low energy input, kind of activities. And full well that people they save all this time during the day. They don't take all that time and then throw it into exercise.
Amazing,
right? Like, you could have been out there for 2-3 hours chopping wood. I doubt they go inside and go exercise for 2-3 hours. They got on their freaking Peloton for 30 minutes and they're like, whoo, I broke a sweat. That was good. Like, and they think they've done something amazing,
Yeah. I like the idea of an axe.
Yeah.
I don't want to use it, but.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. Like,
I'll watch you use it.
I'm not saying you have to choose the axe over the chainsaw. But what I'm saying is when you come at it from this angle, right? Like, what's closest to nature? Right. Closest to nature is you using your strength and your energy and things like that in order to manipulate the wood or the world around you, right? And as you get further and further away from that, you give up certain things. Or in many cases, like talking about COVID, you actually invite things into your life that you didn't intend or didn't realize that you were going to invite in.
Mess with nature.
Yeah. Nature, she's a cruel one, man. Or maybe she's not cruel. She's just just legit consistent.
Wicked.
Yeah. All right. So do you want to move on to the next subject, or is there anything else you want to say about this?
Watch, if you don't watch, Del, like thehighwire.com.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you don't want to join him, just go watch Geert Vanderbosch's interview from last week, because I feel like he was more understandable than Stephanie Seneff. I needed you to literally translate every sentence for me watching her.
Well,
I could understand him.
That was talking about how they manipulated the genetic code in the mRNA vaccines.
Yeah, and that was out over my head.
And so you needed a baseline understanding of, I think, like, if you took AP biology, you pretty much knew what was happening, right? If you didn't take AP biology or any kind of college biology courses, then you kind of needed someone to translate a little bit, because they were talking about, essentially the base pairs in the DNA and the mRNA and how it translates into other molecules and stuff. So,
but Geert Vanderbosch, I don't think that I needed necessarily, like, I just needed to make sure I heard it right. But go watch him, because it is, and he's done 2 interviews with Del, and both of them were eye-opening. The first one, he really explained how the antibodies work and how the vaccine, he really explained how the vaccine kind of shows the body one kind of antibody,
right,
and then it allows everything else through. This one was more geared toward the idea of what's happening with the baseline. And I think both of them were right on and fantastic. And and so I would suggest you go watch it for yourself, because he is also very authentic. You can tell he is very worried. Like, you can see that he's just seems like an, I'm not, and then I said to
him, he seems like he gives a shit.
Yeah, he gives a shit. And I said to him, he's a veterinarian, and Matt's like, but veterinarians.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but no, he's a virologist. Like, he worked for the WHO, right? And he was like one of their main virologists.
Yeah.
So, but I watch him, because we can't say it in the way he can, but I think
and I'll go
eye-opening.
I'll go on the record. Veterinarians are smarter than people doctors. They just are.
Well, they have to.
They have to know
wider,
dozens of.
But
anatomies
I see people see that though.
Like
people see veterinarian because they always put it first.
Yeah.
And they're like,
yeah, like some guy is speaking out of class.
They put veterinarian and then virologist.
And then like, you learn down the line, like, oh, by the way, he was in like a research lab that did animal research, and that's why he had to be a veterinarian. Not that I'm too in favor of that either, but yeah, it's an incredible interview. Definitely
you should watch it.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's move on.
So this is like the bridge.
It is the bridge.
Meme that you sent me. My body, my choice.
Yep.
Until it comes to a vaccine.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It really
it's funny how the my body, my choice crowd just completely forgot about that for 2 years. They allowed
anyone to do anything to themselves and their kids.
They allowed
not everybody though, because
they allowed the fear to override their philosophical position.
A lot of people,
or what they say is their philosophical
but it's not just this, because a lot of people in the My Body, My Choice get their kids vaccinated on a daily schedule before COVID.
Yeah. And
they chose to have the schools push and mandate it. And they didn't push back, and they didn't stand up for a lot of vaccine injured moms.
Well, that was okay, because my body, my choice, and if I like the choice, I can inflict it on your body. Like that's the way they think. If I would make the choice with my body, then you should do it with yours.
I don't want to say that I'm not, like, a lot of my friends are My Body, My Choice people. And like I said last week, I was at the first March for Women's Lives. I was out there like 13 years old. My body, my choice.
Yeah.
Like, I was out there. It was a different fight then, though.
Oh, we can talk about that. So, all right, before we bury the lead here. So this is just one of the bajillion headlines that came out from
My Body, My Choice.
Yep. Yeah. So this is the leak of Roe v. Wade opinion. It's technically a new case, but it obviously harkens back to Roe v. Wade. And so it was a leaked, if you've been under a rock and you haven't heard about this, it was a leaked ruling. The lead author on the majority opinion was Justice Alito. he essentially called into question, or actually he didn't just call into question.
He did a great.
He basically said it was a
argument.
I can't remember his exact words. It was essentially a breach of what the Supreme Court was supposed to do for them to originally rule in Roe v. Wade. And most of the opinion really centers around states' rights and whether or not the federal government had the right to step in and do this, and not leave it up to the states to govern themselves in this specific issue.
I thought the wording of a lot of what was leaked, I thought set a great precedent for freedom.
Oh, it's
away from federal.
If this was an abortion, it was applicable to a ton of other stuff.
I mean, really,
insert whatever you want. Insert, drug decriminalization. Insert.
It set a precedent.
That
the federal government does not
using gold for money. Like insert anything, and it was an amazing precedent for all of those things.
Yeah. They said that I just read today, he had to be whisked to an unknown place.
No, they were today or yesterday, they were out protesting outside of his house. He received death threats and all kinds of other stuff, like absolutely ridiculous. So much so that Jen Psaki put out a press release about condemning, using violence and stuff like that against the justices, saying that they have to be able to do their job without fearing for their lives. Like, absolutely ridiculous. But so, this article was from Medical News Today. Obviously, there's tons of other articles out there that you can check up, how this played out originally. But so since then, it has just devolved into autistic re-screeching on both sides about, the pro-life side and the pro-choice side. Something to get out of the way. This ruling, if it stands, if it comes out and it's exactly the way it was in the draft, does not eliminate abortion in the states where it's specifically legal.
It takes it away from the federal government.
Well, it takes it away from the federal government stepping in if a state says that they don't want to make it legal.
Yeah.
Or if they put in these other kind of laws and regulations that kind of get in the way of an abortion clinic opening or being able to operate. Right. Mm-hmm. But so from that standpoint, I think there's this is such a deep issue.
This is the problem, is that it has been turned into a black and white issue.
Yes.
And this is anything but a black and white issue. And nobody is having the conversations without the pretense of yes or no.
Yeah.
Just having the conversations. There's so much to it.
Yeah.
I've never had an abortion. I will say that. I have had a stillbirth.
Well, they called it a DNC because
it was only the placenta.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've been through the procedure of an abortion because the placenta was left inside me.
Right.
But I have not chosen to end a life. I haven't chosen to get an abortion. But I have had a stillbirth, and I have fought for people's right for many years. And I still think women should have a right, but I think that the conversation has to shift, because it's, I think it started making me really sad to think about all these women on my news feed calling for this choice, the right for women to kill. And you should use those words, because to me it is. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have the choice, but that right, and they're fighting so hard for it. And I just think back to, we birthed this world. Like women, no one would be here without a woman.
Yeah.
It is our nature to birth, to nurture. And I don't mean that in a stereotypical way. I mean it in I don't know what the word is. I mean it in
no, it's an actual
general.
It's an
feminine, masculine.
No, it's an actual. It's the truth. There's billions of people on this planet.
Chemicals in us that open when
none of us were born in a test tube.
And we've birthed this world, and to watch all of these women just fight. And I don't want to say it, I'm not against it, and I don't know where I sit anymore. But I don't think the federal government should have any say. And I think.
Do you think state government should have any say?
I mean, I feel like if it's a state government, I don't think any funding should be given to it. I don't think that's correct. And I think, but I think it needs to be an option, but I don't know where it stands. I need to jump into that gray conversation, because for me, I'm so turned off by having people just 100% this way or that way, because we were talking about it. We're kind of I'm on a spiritual path right now. And I don't know, like, what it means. When does the soul come? There are people who don't believe in souls. Do people have to believe what I believe?
Yeah.
And if someone doesn't believe a soul happens till a certain time, I mean, there's all these nuances to it.
So let's attack it, or let's approach it from this concept of what's natural. Okay.
Natural.
What happens in nature normally? All right. The act of an abortion or that kind of procedure, right, is a very unnatural act.
Well, yeah.
Right.
And especially how we do it now.
Yeah.
It used to be that there were teas and herbs that they would be given if there was a problem, right? You could have a miscarriage through herbs.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be the most natural way, probably not the most like
ethical,
but maybe not the most trustworthy way.
Yeah.
I mean, you're definitely not slicing it out.
Yeah. Interesting tidbit. So Roe v. Wade was decided about 1973. Morning after pill comes out in 1977. So the federal government stepped in, and by the way,
I did take the morning after pill.
Well, no, you have taken that. I know that.
I took it like 6 hours later.
Yeah, but see, here's the difference though between that and say, a medical procedure like an abortion. The morning after pill essentially stops implantation.
Right.
Right. And so
it never happened
until that fertilized egg actually implants in the wall of the uterus. Right. I mean, it's the George Carlin bit, tons of women that have had their periods are a serial killer because most fertilized eggs are flushed out of their system every month. Right. It's that bit. So if you take the morning after pill, at the very least, like if you're talking about kind of like, I guess, responsible activity or something like that, responsible sexual activity. If you identify that you had an encounter that could result in a pregnancy that's unwanted,
or a broken condom.
that is a way to kind of like short circuit.
Yeah.
That, right.
And then you're not dealing with the whole question of life.
Yeah. But so from that standpoint, if we kind of approach it from what's natural, right? We know that certain animals spontaneously abort. And so it's been observed in nature, but here's the circumstances under which they do it. An extreme lack of water or food, attack from a predator or an enemy, severe injury. Those are typically the three.
Yeah.
The only other time that's kind of like, I guess scientists are maybe like they don't know for sure is that there's the mother's body just perceives a problem with the fetus when it's developing and automatically kind of like chooses to release. And so from all of those situations, okay,
right,
those are all extremely I would say not the bulk of what has become the pro-choice argument anymore.
I find that I find that people who are fighting for it often are that rah for it.
Mm-hmm.
I find that they're constantly having like these extra different stories. Like you have like, the mother was at risk, or the baby didn't have an organ, or and I think those will be covered under medical. I don't think that would be I don't think that's part of. I think that if you had a situation that the mother's life was at risk, or the baby was severely ill, I think that would be covered. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone should tell me about that. I feel like that would be covered under some kind of medical.
Well, so this is the reason why, like when I asked you you definitely weren't on board with a federal law one way or the other, right? And which, by the way, I think we agree that the 100% pro-life and the 100% pro-choice, like
you're just shutting your eyes to something.
Full term abortions available versus no abortions at all. I think both of those are wrong.
Yeah.
Right. The question is, all right,
where
like,
in the middle do you?
Where
that's what I was saying.
Right?
Like, I believe that women should have choice.
Yeah.
But also, we were talking about, like, I think it's also, people want to say that this whole pro-choice thing is about women's lives.
Yeah.
I went to the March for Women's Lives.
Yeah.
And I was only 13, so I can't even tell you. But it's not about women. It's not about giving a shit about women.
No.
They don't even give up. I mean, I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with giving a crap about women.
I'll pose something that's maybe a little bit different than that. They use language. The left uses language really effectively to shut down this kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And so they'll use things like reproductive rights. Right. They'll use, it's a woman's right. Right. And all this language that if you then begin to kind of talk through the different situations where maybe that breaks down, they can just feel like it's my reproductive rights. Do you not support my reproductive rights? Like it's just a way of short circuiting the conversation so that you can't be allowed to have an opinion that's
and I do
anything
think
other.
People need to start using the words kill. I think that's
Yes.
Once you get to a certain level,
Yeah.
maybe not in that very first. I'm not, there has been no science to prove when a life comes in. It's just religious beliefs. Am I correct?
Well, no, that's not true. There's been attempts, right? So,
but has anything ever succeeded?
Well, so for instance, a number of states have heartbeat bills. Okay. And so they essentially define
that state would allow it at a certain level or not.
Yes. Yeah. There are other states that have, broader interpretations of when it's feasible. When you were in the March for Women's Lives, okay, or I mean, you were 13, so you were still kind of getting into your formidable years. So, you definitely weren't looking at the same way you are now.
I went to the March for Women's Lives the same year that I was in CCD and locked in a room and having to watch aborted fetuses on a screen.
Yeah.
So I had the black or white world.
Yeah.
Here's the aborted fetuses. Look at them all cut up in the church when I'm trying to get confirmed. And just because, I don't know what the heck's going on. Right.
Yeah.
And then the next week I'm at the March for Women's Lives.
Yeah.
There was nothing in between.
Right.
Ever.
Well, but this is my question. So you might not remember this, or you might not have any recollection, but when you were there at 13, okay, the women that were surrounding you, or the people that were surrounding you, do you think they were fighting for full-term abortions?
No.
Okay. So
I mean, they might have if it had been on the docket, but no, I don't think so.
I mean,
back then it was like they didn't want women to kill themselves with coat hangers. Like that was everyone held coat hangers up at the first March.
Oh no, they have them now. They got pink coat hangers.
Yeah,
they've evolved.
They didn't want, because they didn't want people to die anymore by trying to give themselves
an abortion.
Yeah.
Well, so the reason why I say that there's like both extremes wouldn't work is because the pro-life extreme that would embody itself in legislation would essentially be a blanket abortion ban, and many states
there are moments
might include
situations
like special circumstances, but I have no faith that any level of government could include all of the special circumstances
under
that makes sense.
Women are how many percent of the population? 51. Didn't I just say to you how many periods have I had at my age? It was 300 and something. What?
360 or something.
I have had 360 menstrual. That's 360 chances to have gotten pregnant just from me. Well, 357 because I have 56 because I've had 4 pregnancies.
Well, yes.
I mean, but that's and then every person in the United States, just as,
Yeah.
And how are you going to figure out one governmental thing going to figure out what's right and wrong for everybody?
Yeah. Well, and not to mention the context of the community that they live in, right? Religious communities, secular atheist communities, communities that are well-to-do, communities that are lower income. Economics is a gigantic determinant in this one, because most abortions, I think almost 3/4 of them, happen at or below the poverty line.
So do you believe that a woman who is pregnant and wants to have an abortion due to not having money or support should be able to get that?
If we're talking about someone that had consensual sex, got pregnant, and now says, "Oh, I have a kid I can't care for, I need to get an abortion," I am not comfortable with it. I'm not. Because for me, and that actually leads into one of my biggest gripes here, is the reason why specifically the left uses this language is because they want you thinking in terms of the male white supremacist patriarchy forcing me to be pregnant.
Yeah, they use the word force a lot.
And everyone's like, well, what happened when you weren't pregnant and you became pregnant? It's not like the state inseminated you, right? Like you took part in the act of impregnation, right?
Yes.
And so that conversation has to be had because it has to do with sexual activity, what constitutes healthy sexual activity.
Well, then also what I said to the other day was that how many kids who are teenagers and stuff are on antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds and just don't give a fucking shit.
Yeah.
And they don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
I mean, and there you go, going back to nature. We're so far from it. We have kids on so many medications. How can they even understand? But it doesn't say that you should have the right necessarily to take a life.
Yeah.
If you brought that into, and then the other day I said to you, we have 2 daughters and a son who are not teenagers yet.
Right.
And would I want that my daughters particularly to not be able to if they got, but we are a very supportive family, so we would never force her to have a baby. But
I think the other answer is the answer that dovetails with that is you have to have the conversation with the kid
ahead of time
so that they know what constitutes healthy behavior. Right.
Yeah.
I don't like, I've lived both worlds as well. I went to public school. I went through public health education where they talked about, we had the fucking banana and the condom and all this other stuff.
Is that in New Jersey?
And then I went to religious school through 4th grade where the rule of thumb was only within marriage, nothing outside of marriage, complete abstinence until you get married. Right?
I was never religious. I was like, I would have danced naked anywhere.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just, by the grace of whoever.
That's probably a religion somewhere. But I saw both sides as well. And quite frankly, I don't see the abstinence thing being correct.
Abstinence isn't working because we're human beings and we have wants and needs and we want to be touched and you want to feel things. And that's oftentimes the only way out of depression.
Which, by the way, how do you get married to someone and not have sex first? Like, what if they're just awful?
I'm sure it happens. What about arranged
and then
marriages?
You're stuck with them for the rest of your life.
What if someone else picked that person for you?
Oh my goodness. It's like trying to win the lottery, right? But from that standpoint, so I don't think, the abstinence angle makes sense. I don't think that what's being taught to women from this very radical pro-choice angle is correct either. Well, right? You saw a woman wearing the shirt that says I've had 12 abortions and I'll have another or something like that. Did you see that one?
I know people who have had 6 or more abortions.
That is from that standpoint. Okay.
And just because they didn't want them and they just didn't want
to. That is the poster child for not how this is supposed to work. Yeah. Right. It's because of examples like that.
The people who really need it.
Well, yes, yeah, and this comes up in women's rights all the time. I mean, the freaking Amber Heard thing is a perfect example of this, right? Someone who,
I'm like,
well, no, it devalues.
Oh, because
the women that actually have had
are abused
shit against them.
I can't believe what's going on.
Right,
I cringe.
And I don't doubt. God damn it, why did I start talking? You introduced it, but. There are all these situations where, people are saying this group or whatever, we want to fight for their rights, but then their extreme viewpoint then causes the crazies to come in, and the crazies then completely undermine the actual reason why you're fighting for that thing.
Well, the people who are
center left people that are watching these crazy people argue that you should be able to have a full-term abortion. They should be I'm not with that person.
They are 100% pro-choice, and they New Jersey allowed live birth abortion a few months ago, which is absolutely sick.
It's barbaric.
I mean, okay, I understand if the mom's life is
murder
or something.
I'm not in favor of these states that.
But that's what they'll say. What if but it's only for when it never happens. But it sets a precedent, and it says life isn't valuable.
Yeah.
And it says that life in you, and I've said to this before, I do human design, and they say your soul comes in at 5 months or six months previous to your birth. I mean, so that believes in that. I don't think I think there's lots of religions that preach nonviolence. I wonder how they all feel about all this.
Yeah.
Because, when you think about it, I'm having a hard time with it. I didn't hold, I was in a bad place, but I saw my baby at 20 weeks and there was a life there.
Yeah.
There was definitely a life. There were hands and fingers and eyes and toes and a belly and, and it's just, I have a hard time watching women fight so hard for the right to kill. And we are such naturally nurturing, birthing women.
And again, from that's a perfect.
And I'm not saying I'm against it. That's the thing.
Yeah, but
I need the conversation.
What you're saying is what I think a lot of people back in the 70s were saying. they were saying that there are situations where it's important, right? Survival of the mother, life is threatened, the pregnancy is in jeopardy, things like that.
But we are such we want everything easy in this culture.
Well,
we want everything to be easy.
So what's happening is the people that had that somewhat centrist, I guess I'll call it, viewpoint on this topic have gotten overrun recently with people that are way out on this, like, oh yeah, like, they even have articles about like post-birth abortion. Like, the baby's born on the table. Do you want it? No, cut it up and fucking get rid of it. Like, people have written that shit.
That's like not okay.
Right. And so
it totally devalues life.
But so from your point, like, what's natural, right? Well, what's natural is what you're talking about, like embodying the nurturing part of it. It's community. It's having, people around you that are able to support you. If you don't, then trying to find one. The government has fucking regulated and defunded these charitable organizations. And we were talking about orphanages the other day.
I think orphanages are, I mean, sound crazy when I say it.
And if you're a pro-life righty,
orphanages are awesome.
If you're a pro-life righty,
I have to fix that.
Well, no, good
orphanages. Not. I want to start the best one, but I'll stay far away from diapers.
But like, if you're a pro-life righty, like, what owns the libs more than starting a non-profit orphanage and giving mothers
where
the
kids
ability
can have families
to, and I mean, like,
maybe not institutionalized.
Maybe even take care of the kid and allow the mom to still be part of their life if they can't pay for it. Like,
and maybe
there's so many ways to fix this problem.
Yep.
But again, people just want the easy answer, right?
And how is that killing a life? And you know what? In the end, and I'm not saying a life at like the first week or 2 weeks, or I don't know when it happens. I don't know. Honestly, I'm not the scientist. I just know that
you're not a biologist.
Obviously. I just know that I never felt this way. I don't know if it's all the meditation. Weird.
Yeah.
I'm doing all this meditation. I don't know if it's that. I'm trying to figure out the meaning of life.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, everyone I know is fighting to. I mean, these kids have chosen to come into this world. Their soul chose to come in at some point.
Yeah.
And I don't know when it doesn't become. I mean, I believe in souls. Maybe people who don't believe in souls, they're like, it's just a cell.
Yeah.
But, it does have its own little heartbeat, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it does have its own little kicks.
There are people that say they have memories in the womb.
Yeah, are people. I know somebody who has memories.
Now, I don't know if it's just a fever dream or they actually have memories in the womb, but like, I don't remember anything before like 7. But
I did want to be a rebirther once.
Well, yeah.
But it's hard to be a spiritual person and watch this. My heart hurts for all, and it's not angry. I'm not angry at all.
Yeah.
But it hurts for all these women who feel they have to scream from the towers that we need to be able to kill. Man, that's not my deal. I think women we need to get back to the core of who we are, and we're so far from it. And think about what they do. They do like these birth control pills that throw your now you can get a shot where you get a period once a year or something.
Yeah.
How unnatural is that?
Yeah.
Like, there's just we so far away from, and everyone always says rhythm method is awful, but the ovulation method is really good. It's as good as a condom, but girls don't want to touch themselves.
No, well, and
you need to feel the fluid,
and if you
feel the fluid, you know what's going on.
But you also got to understand that a lot of people look at sex as taboo, right? And so I don't think the answer is necessarily, again, one size fits all. Like, I don't know, like, I'm not one of those people who's like, you're all stuck up, you need to get, like, more with it, and like, sex is just a thing now. Because the problem is that you also have these people that are radically on the pro-choice side, that either knowingly or unknowingly are promoting women to be. I have no problem with promiscuity if it's done responsibly.
Yeah.
But what they're essentially saying is, go ahead, do it irresponsibly. You don't have to deal with the ramifications of how you're acting.
Actions.
Right.
Well, also, I mean, taking it from the other side now, women, it all lands on women.
Yeah.
A condom breaks, a man can walk away. It all lands on a woman. And
can we talk about the dynamics of that? Hold on. Can we talk about the dynamics of that? Because how does that even happen? Like, what are you like? What's the movie? The 40-year-old virgin, like trying to put the condom on or something like that? Like, I mean, I know we talked about the dry
drugs.
I knew we took to talk about the dry coochie scenario.
Yeah. It's just total dehydration. And when you have no hydration, condoms break if you're trying to,
What kind of retarded dude is in the middle of the act and you're the Sahara and he thinks things are all just fine?
Because you're both doing ecstasy.
What is wrong with that?
You're just like not in your mind.
Yeah, what is this, Ben Shapiro that you're sleeping with?
Like, no, stop.
No, seriously.
Stop.
Seriously, there is so much wrong with this debate.
There's so much to talk about.
Because we didn't even talk about mental health. Women that have abortions are more likely to have serious depression, anxiety, drug use, higher rates of suicide. And so now the statistics don't necessarily do a good job of breaking out like whether those women would have had a higher propensity for it beforehand. That's what gave it to them. Right. But it can't be, because the vast majority of women that choose to have an abortion are fairly rational human beings.
I think it has to change your relationship to your body.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Change your relationship to your body.
And here's the other thing: tons of these women are celebrating the act.
And it should be something.
And how far away from nature is that? That should be a moment of mourning and loss and regret. And they're being almost kind of like propagandized and reprogrammed into thinking that this is like an amazing thing. Like we should throw a party. They have freaking abortion parties.
No.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
No, I can't believe that.
Yes. Yeah.
Are you watching Fox News?
No. Oh. I watch more leftist shit than I'm willing to admit, but it's more research than anything else. But it's like it's turned something that should be a loss and not depressing, but
be a party for women to have the right
to
have an abortion.
And if you don't deal with it emotionally, that stuff stacks up inside of you. Like that tips that natural like mental health thing out of balance. And now you have an entire lifetime of 1, 2, or 3 of these situations where you never mourn the loss. You never came to full.
Well, and if you're on tons of drugs, or if you would, like I make pharmaceutical drugs and that kind of thing. Like, when are you ever dealing with it? And there's so much to this conversation that it really just makes me sad that this is where we've come to. Because all of my friends, I have to tell you, a majority of my friends are on this side, and I don't blame them.
Which side?
On the pro-choice side, 100%. And I get it, because we fought really hard. But again,
to what extent? First of all, no, y'all didn't, because there was actually more states with abortion legal than leading into Roe v. Wade than there is now, right? And so the tide was actually turning. And I think the problem with the governmental solution is they, kill a mosquito with an elephant gun, right?
I mean, shouldn't it just be like the vaccine? It's a fucking choice between you and your doctor, and your doctor should know your mental health, should be able to have that conversation. You should have a relationship with your doctor.
So
like you should be able to have
a lot of the most hardcore a lot of the most hardcore pro-life people think of it as murder, right? And so if they had their druthers, they would actually have criminal action.
But here's the problem: a lot of hardcore pro-life is a religious belief that makes that. That's so you can't force your religion if your belief that it's murder because at that it stands in religion.
Yeah.
Then you can't force that belief on anyone.
Well,
so that's where their schism is too. But I mean, like I said, I thought we should use the words kill, but it doesn't come from that. Like we have to push those words out so that women understand, like, just the beauty of what can be.
So and, the answer to this has to be as local as possible. That's where I come community. From. Yeah, like
even hope you live where you want to live.
I mean, like local community, neighborhood, like something like that. Because quite frankly, even putting it at the state level, and people saying like, oh well, if you don't like it, then you could move to the next state. that's still financially arduous for the majority of people, especially after COVID and all the shit they put you through.
like
the Federal Reserve printing money, costs going through the roof, like all this other stuff. Like most people are now poor. Like that's basically what it boils down to, right?
Are you saying though, like each community can choose to have an abortion clinic in their community
if they want, right? I think
there would be. I think if it went to a community level, I think you would find more.
No, I like, for example, say New Jersey decentralized the choice of whether or not abortion should be legal. Yeah. Okay, you would have like the mostly Republican counties where it wasn't available,
but you could,
and then you would have
go somewhere where you need
very left progressive Democrat counties where it was legal, right?
See, I don't want to be that person that's like, well, someone should understand the choice they're making and have to, read up on it or
no, you don't want to force your thing on someone else, right?
But at the same time, I think it would be such a gift for women to have to look the decision in the eye and choose it. Like I think like we've taken all of the, and I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that it's a major life change, and to be able to like see it and look it and have the time with it, sit with it, would be something that would, I think, give back. But you can't force that on somebody. Yeah. And I wouldn't want to, but I've also known a lot of people who've had a lot of abortions and think of it as like
but I mean, again, that individual, I just
totally brought it back somewhere you weren't going.
No, that's fine. That individual, that's the question, right? Whether or not that's a crime, because you're like, from my standpoint, it's very close to that being you're choosing your not rights, like you're choosing the life that you want over the life of the child that's in your son.
I mean, most people would say first trimester. They would say if
that was Roe, right? Like that was Roe v. Wade, right?
But do you believe someone in their first trimester shouldn't have that option?
I believe under certain circumstances, they shouldn't have the option
if they're using it as birth control.
But again,
how do you figure?
But again, here's the thing: as an anarchist and someone who believes in decentralization, I don't think I should be able to impose that on other people. I should be able to speak my mind. And when they're like, oh, well, we had a pregnancy. Like if we're at the neighbors or something, like hopefully they're not watching. If we're at the neighbors or something, they're like, oh, we had a pregnancy scare. I just had an abortion. It was okay. I'd be like, you're a fucking murderer, and just like fucking walk out the door. Because when that stuff happens, that's like the worst manifestation of this, right? Because again, getting back to nature, right?
I would like to
abortions happen in nature only under a very small set of circumstances. It always comes down to survival.
I do think though that we have, as human beings, have always had ways of forcing a miscarriage. There are teas and herbs that will force a miscarriage. Yeah. And I think we've always used them. Yeah. I don't think that we as a humankind have not done it. Yeah. I think it was probably very popular in certain cultures. And like, I just think it was like, not popular, it's probably the wrong word to use, but like, I mean, it was used. Mm-hmm. So it's not like this is a new idea.
It's not. But again, like, what is your dominion? Right? Like, what do you have control over? You have control over yourself and your life, right? And then you have partial control or input directly into our family. Yeah. That's the biggest thing, right? So from my standpoint, the decision needs to be made at the individual and at the family level, okay? And then when it comes to like whether, abortion clinic is allowed in the neighborhood or something, that's a community decision. Do you want that here or not, right? If it becomes criminalized in certain areas, okay? That's up to them. If it's criminalized there, it's criminalized there. If you want to have one, you avoid there. If you don't have, like that's the idea of a truly voluntarist and anarchist society is everyone is a willing participant. And whenever something gets to the point where you don't want to be a willing participant, then you leave and you go somewhere else or you affiliate with a different group.
That feels like a utopia though.
No, it doesn't. It's not utopia because there is no such thing as utopia.
Because you're never going to have the community,
There's no such thing as utopia.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that.
Right. So
I mean, I don't. Yeah.
Exactly. That's actually a very broad tactic when someone brings up the idea of anarchy, because they go, oh, well, you just think you're going to have some kind of utopia, but it's going to suck. And then then they proceed to list off a bunch of problems that we already fucking have.
That's the truth.
And so the key being that you remove, like, you're never going to get away from all these problems. You're always going to have these issues.
Well, you're always going to have to work with your neighbors.
Yes.
And you're always going to have to.
And if you can't, or you refuse to, then you have to suffer the ramifications of that. Either you don't have the support of your neighbors, or you move or they move, right? But from this standpoint, I can tell you that if the federal government, if the Senate and the legislature decide to now, institutionalize Roe v. Wade by making a law,
do you think that
they're going to fuck it up.
Are they going to get rid of the filibuster?
The states that have made these laws, they all fucked it up. The ones on the pro-life and the pro-choice side, they've all fucked it up. Okay. The way you fix this is you get together in local communities and you just come up with a consensus and be like, look, how do we want to raise our kid? I want to raise my kids this way. You want to raise your kids that way. Do we want to allow this in our community or not? Right. And if you want to allow it in the community and I don't, well, then I have a couple of options. I stay and I bitch and moan and complain and try and change hearts and minds, or up and leave and I go somewhere else and I find another community that's more befitting. I think for the longest time, we've thought in terms of higher and higher levels of hierarchy fixing these problems for us. And we've abdicated our own responsibility in actually addressing these problems. Like, so much of this also goes to, like, how do you raise your kids, right? Like, how do you teach them? What conversations do you have with them?
Yeah.
I'd imagine a ton of parents rely on the Board of Ed's health program to teach little Johnny and Susie
changing
sex.
in New Jersey.
Okay.
Did they take that back? Yeah. That's scary shit happening.
Right.
Anyone who's not from New Jersey, that's scary shit happening.
So
in the sex ed.
So a little of a data point here. So this was interesting. So, I mean, my feed, I have a mixture of people. It's not all left. It's not all right. I have a bunch of anarchists. So when I put up, where the heck is this poll I had? Here it is. So when I threw up this poll, are there situations where an abortion is the acceptable action? Feel free to explain in the mosh pit. 80% of people said yes.
I think there are. I think so too.
And I can tell you from people in my feed, like a lot of the people that I've seen that, respond to this or put comments in, like, I know these people aren't, if they're pro-choice, they're closer to pro-life than they are the extreme end of pro-choice, right? They're just pro-choice in a very, very succinct or small number of situations, right?
What were some of the responses?
Some of the interesting responses were, one of them was in the cases of rape, incest, or if the mother life is threatened or something like that, and the baby is far enough along where they could be saved, right? The one point was that most pro-life conservatives would tell you that the pregnancy shouldn't be terminated. The baby should try to be delivered, and then all means used to try and, keep the baby alive, essentially, which I thought was a very interesting point, because I've never really heard that before from someone on that angle of it. I always heard that, like,
well, we were talking,
that would be the only exception, but
we were talking the other day about just like in a spiritual level, and not to be spiritual, but I've worked with people who have kids who will never be past the age 2 mentally.
Yeah.
Who will probably never see their 20th birthday, or maybe even 10th birthday, right?
Yeah.
But if you believe that a soul chooses a life, then they chose that life. They know it from the get-go. Like, when you're born with massive issues, that's the only life you know.
Yeah.
It's not like something. It's not like being an adult and losing your limb, or you know what I'm saying? It's just kind of what you know. And we were talking, I was telling you, like, I think if you choose that life to come and teach something, like those kids, and I've met them, they are wonderful, and they have changed my life. They have changed their parents' life. They have changed their friends' life. They have made tsunamis of change in their lives just from being who they are, even though they will never have the intelligence past a 2-year-old,
Right.
and they're already 14 or something, like, or they have massive problems. And I'm not even talking like, I mean, it's just even like I worked for a while at where they deal with spinal bifida. These people, these kids have altered lives. What kind of society would we be if we didn't have those learning curves? Is that the right word? Learning curves?
Well, no.
If we didn't have those situations in life. So if you were to all of a sudden abort every child who wasn't perfect, you know what I'm saying? What kind of society would we live in?
This also very much gets into like a Brave New World conversation.
Yeah.
Right. If all of a sudden that we could genetically test for all kinds of stuff in the womb, right? If you have just a fully pro-choice blanket, availability in a state or federally, right? When genetic testing comes in, you're like, I don't like blue eyes, right? You get in this like designer baby kind of situation where people are like,
well, I think
look, I want to get pregnant naturally, but I don't want to have a green-eyed baby. I want to have a blue-eyed baby. And this one has green eyes. So I'm going to kill that one. And then we'll try again and try and get a blue-eyed one. Like,
well, in the future, when nobody can get pregnant because of the vaccine.
Well, that's also true. The pro-choice crowd is overestimating what they need. They just have to advocate for Pfizer boosters. Like, that's just it.
But no, I think people rely on human nature to not do that. But I mean, you never know where things go. And when you don't develop that empathy people shouldn't. I think I worked with a Down syndrome girl for, I don't know, 4 years.
Yeah.
On and off. And she was amazing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things they do the amniocentesis for, so that you can abort if you don't want a Down syndrome baby. Right. That's one of the first ones. And she was the most glorious, happy. And I've met a few Down syndrome kids now, and they are all freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Just freaking awesome. And they may not have long lives, but they touch the community around them. And that is so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. We can't live our lives away from trauma. We're always going to talk about this with grief. There's no one in this world that doesn't understand grief.
Yeah.
They may not choose to jump into it, but they know it. It's there.
I think a lot of people run from it, though.
Yeah. I think they run from it, but it's there. They can't hide from it.
Yeah.
It happens.
Well, no, it's the balance returns, right? So whether you acknowledge it and actually deal with it in a healthy way and acknowledge the grief and deal with it in a healthy way, if you bottle it up or compartmentalize it or something, it rears its head somewhere else. Right. And so it's like, no, screw you. Like, you're going to deal with this one way or another. And the longer that you bottle it up, the worse it gets. Right. Because when you finally have to deal with it, it's all of that time and energy spent compartmentalizing or pressing it down that then just explodes.
That's
right.
Like if you were to not deal with, I know that's the big argument. If a kid has a lot of, if there's a baby in the womb that doesn't have the ability to live for very long or not a happy life. And I understand that. I'm just saying, and my point is not that you have to have all these babies.
Yeah.
My point is just that there is a time and place for certain situations, and that they do give back to life. I'm not saying that they should, be forced to be born, It's not my choice. It's not my body. It's not my, my family. But we were talking about just women, and you were saying the women's movement went wrong when they didn't just push the I'm not gonna have sex,
dude. and then all of a sudden they turned around and went, we're going on a sex strike. And I'm like, guys, you could have done this all along. Like, we didn't need a court case for this shit.
But it does. That shit lands on women, and it is an unfair.
But how empowering is this? How empowering is this message to women? You all are the ultimate arbiter of when sex happens. Okay, outside of rape, like forced, right? But consensual, right, is like you get to secede, right? Like, you're like, no, I'm out, and you just walk away. Sex don't happen, right? It's not the same way with men. Like, men, just the natural order of things. There's men are the pursuers, right? Like, we bring you the pretty flower or whatever, right, and do the dance, and then if you like it, then we can proceed. If not, then you're like, nope, sorry, not going to do it. All of this conversation that's also happening on the pro-choice side, I think is completely, I don't know if it's demeaning or short-circuiting, or it's just getting away from that idea that like you as a woman ultimately have the choice, which also means that the pro-choice of it should be whether sex happens, right? Or not all of it whether sex happens, but a good portion of it should be whether sex happens.
There are going to be those times when the condom breaks and shit goes wrong.
That's fine, but I don't think that's not the vast majority. That's not the vast majority. The vast majority are at
because if you have a condom break, there is the morning after.
The vast majority are at or below the, like, this disproportionately affects Black people. If someone's like, I'm for Black Lives Matter, and they don't at least acknowledge the fact that a large portion of abortions are like basically Black children, right? Or potentially Black children, then you're missing the boat. Like, you don't understand. But this is very much an economic problem.
Yeah.
Because it happens, 3/4 happen at or below the poverty line. So you're talking about drugs, you're talking about a single parent situation with just the mom. You're talking about you are talking about, you know, a community that we've basically ravaged with the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And then completely obliterated their natural course of having families and building families and things like that, right? And so there's so much to unpack.
It's so much more than a yes or a no.
Yeah, like it's so much more than are you for or against women's rights? And you're like, you're right to do what?
I mean, let alone the sexualization of girls at such a young age.
Can I also set the record straight? There's no fucking such thing as women's rights. Okay? There's rights. That's it.
Rights.
Yeah, that's it. Right? Like men, women,
but I've
Black, white, Catholic, Protestant, like
the worst, I believe, across any ism is misogynism. It has been something that has been around for so long, and it is so subtle, and it is so underneath everything. I think it's really volatile underneath. And I'm not saying isms are worse, but I think it is deep shit.
Yeah.
And it's never been faced, I don't think, in this country. It's been Band-Aids have been put on.
No,
not this Band-Aid.
I think the problem is that political groups found a way
to go around the system.
Well, no, to use women's fire that came from that and then redirect it into all these other things, as opposed to the things that actually matter, right?
Yeah.
And that being said, like, there's a lot of also red herrings and false corridors that they send you down to, like, you know, the wage gap thing and all this other stuff. It's all manufactured drama, right? Like, there is a certain level of all of the isms that exist, right? I would agree with you that for a long period of time, women were, you know, subjugated to being the homemaker and the, you know, and the child rearer and everything like that. You know, it's the Mad Men scene where it's like all the white guys in the room smoking and drinking during the day. They got the high price jobs. The wives are at home, and then they have their like thing on the side as well. Like that like caricature is obviously like overblown, but from that standpoint, yeah, like the roles of men and women have very much been in contention, like for a long time, right?
I think it's deeply woven.
But that being said, they use your ire and redirect it into politically advantageous avenues, not what's in your best interest.
Here you have women who are, again, I don't want to be stereotypical.
Yeah.
But in that, like, women nature, nurturer, listener, caretaker, make it all right.
Yeah.
Do this. So if you prey on that, that's like a natural instinctive piece of us that a lot of women have now, like, pushed down, and that, like, that intuitive medicine woman, you know, magic, and that it's been ruined in so many ways. And
well, it's been weaponized against you in many cases.
Oh, I think the misogyny is so, and we're like, it's a half and half. I think women are like a little over percent.
And what's funny is some people might listen to that and they'll go, oh, you know, like, they identify misogyny as this thing that the left uses to say that white supremacist males are misogynistic.
Have you seen the Fox News anchors?
But hold on. Yeah, but hold on. So there's also a huge amount of misogyny that happens on the left as well.
Oh yeah, on the left.
In terms of, so like it is not like a
weird though. It's twisted
unipartisan thing,
It's
but,
used differently.
But that is also something that like we can't fix that. Like you and I, we can't fix that on a global scale. We can fix that between us. We can hopefully maybe work on our children and have conversations with them about it, and maybe affect the people that are kind of like around us, that are around our circle, right? That's who you can affect. That's who you have the most effect on, right?
I told Veronica today about how women used to squat.
Oh my God.
And they would bleed into the earth. That was all. You got natural. That's natural. Oh you
my
can't
God.
get much more natural than that.
Now I'm having visions of the I'm having visions of the social media accounts with the women that refuse to wear anything during their periods.
Because
and
you
like,
can so apparently, I don't know. I think it's true though. You can feel the if you're very in touch with yourself, and I think I feel this every once in a while. You can feel the contractions almost of your uterus. So you just go to the bathroom but then you have to be able to jump up to the bathroom anytime.
No, that's not how
You're talking about the runners who are bleeding through.
No. I'm talking about the women who specifically don't care about when their uterus is contracting. They refuse to wear feminine products during their moon. And then they like go on the subway and they're like bleeding down their leg. And people are like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Oh yeah, fuck the man." Like, I mean, like that makes absolutely no sense to me.
Well, if you're that, there is a whole movement of like, if you can feel the contractions and you can go to the bath, it's literally only like a squirt. And then it just like, if you can push that out, then you're good till the next
You're
one.
looking at this from a constructive standpoint. I'm saying that there are crazy women that refuse to wear feminine products and bleed all over the landscape.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. That's
and they're not fertilizing the fields, by the way. They're it's on the subway, it's on the sidewalk, it's all kinds of other places, right? All right.
Back to it though. Just I don't know where I stand.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like, this conversation has to be had with me.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't have it with any of my friends who are very pro-choice.
Yeah.
Even though I was there with them, like, I feel like I can't have it. There's no conversation that can be had. And I don't want to breach it because I respect my friends and but I think the words kill need to be added into the conversation. And I think that we need to talk about it. Yeah. My spiritual friends particularly, I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I don't understand. I don't know.
If they are very spiritual, then the way you have to approach them is from that angle, and ask them, like,
I don't want to approach them.
Well, it's fine. If it doesn't come up, it doesn't come up. But I mean, like,
fierce feminists as friends.
I think the biggest conversation that people need to be having is like, is this your business? Right? I don't think it's most people's business. Now, here's the other thing that we didn't touch upon was we were talking about men's rights in terms of pregnancy and that kind of thing.
I think they should have a say, whether it's the same amount of say. It is their half baby.
I would say that in the case where it was consensual, right, and both, like, in a healthy situation, right, it's consensual. You both communicate what you want out of it. Right. If you what you want is casual, physical contact and sex, then you need to communicate that up front. If it's something that's beyond that, and you need to be communicative of that. Right.
Yeah.
And so in that situation where it's consensual and we pretty much know where both people were at the time that the baby was made, or at least when the act happened. Right. To say that the guy has no say is absolutely wrong.
I don't think the say is exactly the same because it's in the woman's body, but I think the conversation should be, I mean, it is.
Yeah, but hold on. Yeah, but hold on.
Your child.
But hold on. If the sex happens in a way that is highly possible to result in procreation, okay, whether you intended it that way or not, all right, there's two people. Like, You can't just say it's happening in my body and you can't tell me what. Now, that being said, I don't think a man should be able to force a woman to terminate a pregnancy. Okay.
Oh yeah, no.
But
I don't think that right is out there, is it?
There's been lawsuits.
I don't think that.
I think there's been lawsuits. I don't know if they've been upheld, but
I don't think that would be in court.
But I think that men definitely should be given a say,
like a 50-50 say.
I think so. Yes, I think so. Yeah, but hold on. The woman carries the child to term over a potential 9 months.
Yeah.
Okay. How long is that kid's life? Mm-hmm. If it's a healthy child, how long does that kid live?
Oh, hopefully
70, 80 years, right?
Is he vaccinated?
Okay. Well, good question. Was the mother vaccinated while she was pregnant?
Because oh my goodness.
And was it Pfizer? So
by the way, check out the dump.
Yeah.
Pregnancy and Pfizer.
Yes. But we're also in this entire process prioritizing 9 months of pregnancy over 70 to 80 years of potential life. And that's also something that people don't think about.
And it's our new generation. And like I was saying to you, it's like, what happens when we evolve as human beings? And if we evolve as human beings and more people have abortions, what happens to that evolution? It's hard. And I think in a spiritual way. So I'm not thinking like third arm.
Yeah.
Or no wisdom teeth.
No.
But like,
no, you're thinking kind of like karmically or,
But I mean, every person out there was born because of a woman and her. It's hard. I go back to it. Makes me sad.
Yeah.
It just makes me sad to see women fighting for this, and it just is.
Yeah.
And I don't know where I stand, but I know after having a stillbirth, for sure that changed my mind.
Well, I think
Well, I had a stillbirth, and my friend that week had an abortion. So that was interesting.
This is an important. I'm going to trample over that point you made. We can come back to it if you want. But this is an important point to make. You know where you stand.
I know where I stand.
Right?
Well, yeah.
You know where you stand.
But I don't know where am I right to tell anyone else or their ability.
Well, I'm going to save you that. I don't think you have the right to tell anyone else.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have the right to tell anyone else. But
you can't make it illegal or you can't make it legal.
No, you can't make it a blanket ban because then you get black markets and you get backstreet alley stuff. Prohibition never works, right? And then you can't make it completely wide open either.
People are human.
I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the decisions that are made, especially these ones that are the hardest because they're emotionally charged. They're not black and white, have to happen as locally to the person or the family as possible. The further you get away from that, the further you get away from nature, right? Yeah. The further you get away from the people that actually have to deal with the ramifications of it.
It's so true.
But
more people should be having this conversation because it's where it needs to be. It's about life and death.
Yeah.
Really.
And we should tell the government to F off. We don't need DIFUS. What we need is nonprofits, and we need to bring back charity hospitals and charity orphanages that are attached to religious organizations.
New York City, well, before he died, he said that they used to have when he was a kid because they were so poor.
Mm-hmm.
And they said they used to have, I think I could be wrong. My aunts and uncles sometimes watch this. I don't know, maybe they'll correct me. But like they used to have these little free clinics.
Yeah.
On all the corners.
Yeah.
So if they were sick, they would just go into the free clinic and get what they needed.
Yeah.
And I was like, what happened to that?
No, they all got priced out because medical cost inflation or regulated out of business.
Yeah.
That's what happened. And then the byproduct of taxation and the increased cost of living and things like that is also the fact that
back then that was baby boomers, though. You had like 5-6 kids per house.
The donations that went to those organizations could have been like saved, but not saved like in the stock market, saved in like a savings account and actually made 4, 5, 6, 7%. And so you could have sustained an organization like that. When you get to an environment where your only chance of taking money and to make more money is to put it into high risk stuff, those organizations fall flat because the minute they try and start, if they have a bad investment year or something like that, they're gone, they crash, right? And then so what you end up with is an environment where the only like charities and nonprofits that are like able to be successful are big.
Well, that's
right?
what he would
Because
say.
they
Like,
can
he would
scale.
say, you go to the hospital if you had a major problem, but if you had a cold or a fever, you went to the clinic. He's like, well, everyone now goes to the emergency
you go to ER,
which is just insane.
and it's $2,000 before they even see you.
Yeah, or $180,000 to get killed for COVID.
Yes, yeah, but so yeah, no, I think we've talked about this in depth. I think a lot more people need to have this conversation.
Like, not enjoy, but it needs to be like, what's the word?
It needs to be
together,
more inclusive. It needs to be more,
because it's more than just a fucking right. Why does a woman have a right to kill?
Yeah.
Why is that? Why, just because you're a woman, you have the right to? The whole thing is just a conversation.
Yeah.
And I literally don't know where I stand. I know where I stand for me. I know where I stand for my kids. Like, and I would never force them to do anything, but I would 100% support them. Like, I know where I stand, but I don't think the federal government should be there.
Yeah.
I don't know if the state. I think probably. I don't know. But the conversation is so much deeper.
Richard said, any solution that gets the government out of it and leaves it between an individual and their doctor is the choice I would vote for.
Well, then the problem is, though, a lot of doctors are just.
Well, but again, there's no free market mechanism here either.
For doctors?
But no. So talking about men's rights, talking about doctors and whether or not they can be sued. So, for instance, if you go to a fully choice model, a father, biological father, or family or things like that, wouldn't be able to sue the doctor for performing the procedure, and they wouldn't be able to sue the mother for having the procedure done.
I feel like I would be surprised if they
that
lawsuit.
I need to think on it more, but there's definitely some free market mechanisms that have also been short-circuited by all of this legislation and the laws that have been put in place.
A lot of people like Planned Parenthood. I think Planned Parenthood, I wouldn't.
Well, no,
I think they have really. All that stuff that came out.
It went the way that all of these organizations that end up partnering up with the government go.
Yeah,
it ends up becoming a breeding ground for political gain. It becomes a breeding ground for corruption. It becomes a breeding ground for
the free money that comes in.
Yeah, like all of these things, like those organizations. Like if you become dependent on public money, just kiss it goodbye. Whatever your original vision was, it's fine. Like, walk away.
It's like being in a nonprofit and your board changes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, it's even worse than that.
Well, yeah.
Because like you still could get some sane people on the board. There's no sane people in politics. There just aren't. No. They all look at things from a completely ridiculous viewpoint. Like it's like they look at things like they're on Mars.
Yeah.
Right. And like everyone else is on Earth. And they're like, well, from here it looks like that. And you're like, it doesn't look anything like that. And they're like, no.
Flat.
They're like, no, trust me. I'm in a seat of power. It's like that. All right. So,
conversation.
Yeah. If you've, Rip had a good idea. Private courts. Private courts is an awesome idea. Essentially, the idea that you don't necessarily have state-run courts. You have local privatized courtrooms. Essentially, like, the one-room schoolhouse kind of model, where the families of the children got together to pool their money to pay for the teacher.
Yeah.
Same deal. Neighborhood, small community.
How do you know your judge isn't crooked?
Well, you get to hire and fire them. It's private, right? They don't have tenure. They're not a politician. They're nothing like this. You get to actually, directly hire them, and if they do good, then And then there's always the natural rights argument, the War of Athens, where say something crooked's going on. That was a voting situation, not a judicial situation. But all the GIs coming home from, I believe it was World War II, basically laid siege to the room where the corrupt sheriff was counting all of the votes, and they fought their way inside using government-issued guns that they got during World War II to fight their way in and make sure that the vote was counted correctly so that he got voted out. So
you totally lost me on
it. No, War of Athens.
Okay.
Yeah. It's 1940. Damn, I'm gonna screw it up. It was like 1948 or something like that. But anyway, private courts would definitely be a solution. So we could talk about this more. We probably will talk about this more because
I wish more people would talk about it.
Yeah.
I really do. Like, make it a conversation, because the conversation's about relationships. It's about women. It's about men. It's about life, you know, and it could be a beautiful seed for, you know, kind of bringing some but bringing us back to being natural in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Back to nature.
Back to, like, I mean, I wish more people would have it instead of the cry about having to. On my feed, there were lots of beheaded male statues.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had that on your feed.
No, you know what's funny is this, again, going back to like using that kind of like undertone of misogyny against women to like basically radicalize them in ways that like they wouldn't normally.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it takes the form of. It takes the form of women, you know, saying that they want men forcibly sterilized and beheading men's heads and stuff like that. And it's like, do you want equality or do you want vengeance? Like that's the question. And I think all too often we end up with people who end up taking control and they don't choose equality. They choose vengeance over, you know, just righting the wrongs.
Or they just go far onto an argument just because.
Yeah.
They'll say, to live birth abortion just because.
Yeah.
Because that's on the road.
Well, no, they feel backed into a corner ideologically, because the moment they show a crack, they fear that the whole thing falls apart.
Live birth abortion. If someone can bring a baby to term, you had plenty of chance.
Dude, if you're in the middle of labor and you're like, you have buyer's remorse,
that's just
like, and that doctor should get fucking sued too.
Yeah.
Because if that happens,
it's legal in New Jersey.
If that happens and the doctor actually elects to do it, the doctor should get fucking sued too, because that is appalling. That is murder. Because that's now not a kid that needs.
And you were saying that
machines, they're alive.
You were saying that people don't have, for miscarriages, right? They don't have ceremonies, but everyone I know who's brought baby to full term and had stillbirths, and I know a lot of them because I'm in a pregnancy loss group.
Yeah,
they all have graves. They all have all kinds of stuff.
Well, no, that's
babies born.
That's what I was saying with the short circuiting of the natural process of the grieving, right? In these cases, like, there are women that have miscarriages that really want a baby, that grieve the loss of a baby that might only be, you know, 8 weeks along or 9 weeks along. They feel it and they grieve it, and then they
I know people
move on and try again,
5,
right?
6 miscarriages and can't.
But that's a healthier way of dealing with that than someone who thinks that they can electively terminate the life inside of them and then just go on with their life. Like, you know, what's on my Wednesday calendar? Like, no, that's not right. Like, that's not natural.
It's not that every abortion is that. It's really not. Like, there are other reasons, and I've had friends who just had abortion because they broke up with their boyfriend, or
my God,
they don't have the money.
Oh my God,
or they don't have the job, or it would be too much of a hassle. But, you know, things happen in life, and, you know, one of my good friends had her first kid at 14. And he was the joy of her life.
Yeah.
And her mom supported. Not everyone has the moms. But 14, I don't know how else you would do it if you didn't have family.
Yeah.
If you didn't have family to help you.
Well, no, I mean, in those situations where the community would have to come in around you. Like,
and I'm not saying you should force 14. I have to put that out there.
No.
I'm not saying that. But there is a gift that is waiting. And, you know, and it's just the conversation should be had between everybody.
At the heart of this conversation is also the need for better building of community, right? Like, you need, like, you can't sit around and fucking watch Netflix all day long and not do the work on the community around you and expect for these things, when they come to your doorstep, to be easily taken care of without doing the work ahead of time. Right. And so whether it's your family, whether it's your neighbors or your town or whatever, or your extended family, like, you have to do the work. If you're not doing the work ahead of time, obviously when these things come to pass, they're going to be harder to deal with.
Yeah.
In which case, if you haven't done the work, you know, it's the kid who chooses to cheat. How many
kids are not doing the work now?
It's the kid who chooses. It's the kid who chooses to cheat on the test, not because there was a desire to cheat, but because they just, you know, didn't do their work, didn't study, didn't anything like that. damn it, I hate using traditional school examples. But you know what I'm saying, right? It's like you get to the point where it's time to actually pay the piper, and you realize like, oh crap, I should have done all this work all the way along. And then you're like, okay, how can I actually get this done? And the only choice that you feel that you're left with is the bad choice, right? Like, we definitely have to do a better job of building community, because close-knit communities that are supportive don't end up with these problems as often.
There's no value on it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to put a value on it.
Yeah.
You know, you have a close-knit community.
So, all right.
Yeah.
That's it for this evening. I got a couple more comments out of Rip. He says, count this leak be international for power brokers to seize control of the narrative going into midterms. I definitely think it's politically motivated.
It's politically motivated.
Yeah.
Absolutely was a leak.
I don't think it was a coincidence that it happened the day before the Pfizer documents came out.
Oh, I think it absolutely covered up that too. With the pregnant women too coming out. What was the statistic you were telling me about it?
No, it was a huge increase. It was something like a 40% increase in the incidence rates of fetal defects.
And then
they
had
mothers that take the vaccine.
Hepatitis, liver of the hepatitis they had in all those young kids.
Yes.
They were finding 7 cases.
No, there's all kinds of stuff buried in there.
Doesn't look like a lot.
And Rip also said shifts society's already poor focus away from COVID debacle.
Oh my God.
And the government made a mess.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
I can't believe that.
Spot on. So, all right. That's all we got tonight. Look, if you stuck with us this whole time, you guys are freaking renegades.
Rock stars.
Thank you so much. If you missed any part of it and you joined us late, I'll have the audio up within a day or two on the podcast, so you can check out Ungovernable on any of the podcast platforms. And while you're sticking around, throw us a like or a subscribe if you're not currently subscribed. And if you were watching the recorded version, throw your opinions and stuff in the comments. We like to get back to you and have a conversation online as well.
And thehighwire.com.
Yes, totally, definitely check out thehighwire.com.
That's the best.
It is. It'll blow your mind.
You know what? He backs everything up.
Yeah.
He backs everything up. You get all of the information and all the studies. I mean, I think he's not propaganda at all.
No, it's completely transparent. It's completely transparent.
Transparent.
All right. Any last things to say?
No, that's it. I think.
All right.
We're still doing cold plunges.
Yeah, still doing cold plunges. And transcendental meditation, which will have to be
talk about. We can't.
An
it's
episode
all
in the near future.
Lip, don't talk. Kind of. I can't ever tell my secrets.
Yeah, we can't tell the secrets, but we can kind of we can give the cruising at 30,000 feet kind of view of it. You know,
that's what's been all our natural stuff.
It's also the transcendental meditation part is actually kind of brought a lot of pieces together. At least for me, I think for you too, probably. But so that's it. Look, if you have kids, kiss them, hug them. If you have a loved one, kiss and hug them too. Hug your family, or you know what? If you're on your lonesome, hug yourself. There's nothing wrong with that.
I don't think so. Hug a tree.
Or a tree.
Trees,
yes.
I hear you can get lots of energy from trees.
That is well. I mean, if it's a good-looking tree,
you gotta hug it right now.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
There is a tree hugger method.
That will not be an episode on this show.
I don't want to do it.
With that, we are out. Have a very good evening, everyone. We'll see you next week at 9 p.m. on Monday. So, see you later. Bye.